Here we go. We're going to go a little bit longer than normal today, so we're going to give everybody a minute to get it together. Hopefully give Facebook a minute to get together and make sure the audio and video and everything's working for everybody. Some of you are going to be shocked. I've actually got notes today, and I know I'm excited, a little nervous. We'll see how this plays out. I was going to tell you something really quick. It's useful anytime you're attempting to learn something new. Your body goes through a lot of stress learning something new, particularly if it's not just intellectual, if it's something new in your behavior, something that's going to be new habits, particularly if you're going to keep those new habits for life. It's a big change. There's a lot of stress, and some of it you'll be conscious of, some of it will be unconscious. In fact, usually the majority of it's unconscious. If you just use our breathing exercise, the 3 deep, slow breaths, it's a great thing to help with some of that unconscious stress. And right now, all we're going to do is breathe in deeply, let the belly expand, and as you exhale, just let it go slowly. The second one, feel the belly expand, and as you exhale, just let it go as slowly as you can. If you do it 3 times in a row, it's magic. Deep breath in. Let it go slow. That's a great way to start if you're about to work on learning anything new. Now, first things first, if you're wanting to know how I dropped 80 pounds and how you can drop a significant amount of weight yourself, this is the video for you. Keep watching. Before I forget, if you want to keep up with everything I do online, you can find all of it at benlangley.com. Go to benlangley.com, the podcast, the Facebook, everything gets posted there. So that's the best way to keep up with whatever's going on with this crazy long-haired guy online. Now, we're going to cover a story in a minute, but a lot of people ask what's the best diet, how are they going to lose the most weight, and what has worked best for me. There's different diets. We could rank diets. Maybe I'll do that at some point where we rank diets for the upside and downside of everything, because virtually everything has an upside and a downside. What I suggest to people is the Frankenstein diet. Now, the key to this, of course, is changing your brain for fat loss. But if we're going to call the diet anything, it's sort of the things that have worked for me that I've stitched together in my own pattern. Or if we're going to call it anything, I think the Frankenstein diet is appropriate. Just dug up a piece here, dug up a piece there, kind of messily knitted them together, and but it's working for me. It lives. And the pieces I suggest you start to play with first are healthy fats and moderate carb reduction. Moderate carb reduction ideally is about, get it down to around 100 grams per day. If that's too hard to start out with, some people are eating more than 200 grams of carbs a day or more. If that's too hard to start with, you could try going somewhere between 2/3 to 3/4 of what you're getting currently. Or you could just try eliminating carbs at one meal and making sure you're not making up for it at the very next meal or the meal before. So there's some different methods of carb reduction. Great thing to test out initially. Another thing, and I'd combine this with the carb reduction, because when you're cutting those calories out for carbs, your body is going to be wanting some calories to replace those. You don't have to give it as many calories, but you want to give it something. And healthy fat is the most satisfying food, it's most energy dense, and if you're getting healthy fat, nutritionally dense food you can get. And so coconut oil is the one I generally suggest, but the 2 biggest for me have been coconut oil and grass-fed butter. But coconut oil you get at grass-fed butter is not super cheap, particularly if you're going to be using it a lot, and we cook with it. We put it on bread, toast, whatever else, put it in lots of different dishes. So we go through a lot of grass-fed butter. It's not that cheap. It's at least, if you're using regular butter, you can expect grass-fed butter to roughly double the price. If you're eating margarine, depending on which margarine you're eating, you're eating industrialized garbage, unfortunately, if you're eating margarine. But if you're going to butter, you can probably expect it to double or triple the price of margarine. If you're going to grass-fed butter, it might make it 4 times, 5 times as expensive. Coconut oil you can add in relatively easy, and I usually suggest people start with a tablespoon, at least a tablespoon a day, but ideally a tablespoon with each meal. And if you want some of the appetite suppressing effects, shoot for about 20 minutes before a meal with coconut oil. And those are some of the best things you can do just to begin to lose weight, just to start your fat loss journey off. Start testing some different things. Don't get overly connected to the idea of, this diet or this one thing being the one thing. Test things out. Let reality tell you the truth of it for you. And if it's impossible for you to do it, if you think maybe someone could do it, but it's impossible for you to do it, that's not the right thing for you. Or it might be not the right thing for you right now. So get something that works for you and works for you right now that you can reasonably bring into your life. Give it a month to 3 months to make sure you've got it down. And once you've got it down, add something else in. Test something else out. Start building out the system. Frankenstein together your own diet with time, patience, and dedication to actual results. What's actually working in the world. What's actually bringing the weight off you and making you feel better. Because if you're losing some weight and you feel like crap, that's not going to last. So you got to feel better too. And one of the great things about healthy fats, they will make you feel better. They will balance out your energy. There's a lot of benefits to healthy fats. We might cover it in depth in another video. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to keep up with everything I do online, check out benlangley.com. You'd think he'd learn the name of his own site before he went live. No, not this guy. benlangley.com if you want to keep up with what I'm doing online. Now, the story I was going to tell you about. I was on, I believe, was it a Reddit? I think it was Reddit. I get all this online stuff. I'm kind of a fossil. I'm sort of figuring out. It's funny, I work in IT, yet I'm kind of a fossil and have not kept up with social media or most of the stuff online. But what else? I'm learning at a very slow pace. I think it was Reddit. I think it was a Reddit Ask Me Anything. One of the things one of the people asked was, I'm about 260 pounds. My ideal weight's 180. What's the best thing for me to do? And this hit me because this is almost exactly my story. And if I was going to give that person, they also asked, how long should I expect? What's a realistic expectation for me to drop those 80 pounds? My answer would be 18 months. Or at least that's how long it took for me. The real answer is it's going to depend on a variety of factors. No one likes that. It depends on stuff. But that's the truth. It depends on stuff. For me, it was 18 months. Depending on what you're doing and how quickly you implement, it could go faster. Depending, it might take more time. But if it took 2 years and you had permanent habits in place that helped you keep the weight off, or it was 3 years, would that be that big a deal? That time's going to pass anyway. Might as well pass with you feeling better and better and getting lighter and looking better and better. That's not a bad way to pass the time, is it? So be patient with this. To the best of your ability, be patient. Doesn't mean don't try things. It doesn't mean don't get after it. It just means don't expect everything to happen at once. It's one of the challenges we have in the modern world. We want everything all at once. But if you want something to last, you need to be willing to take your time with it. So for my 18-month journey, the first 28 pounds roughly came off in the first 30 days. So once I just started the moderate carb reduction, and I kept a cheat day, by the way. 1 day a week, I ate as much of whatever I wanted as I wanted. But for the other 6 days, moderate carb reduction, around 100 grams of carbs. In 30 days, I lost 28 pounds, and there was something different than there had been in any of the diets I'd been on before. There wasn't, once the results plateaued, and they plateaued for a couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of days of plateaued results was enough to make me start getting nervous. But the results plateaued for a couple of weeks. And rather than feeling that panic setting in like, what if it stops working? I just felt like, if I'm just roughly 30 pounds lighter for the rest of my life and I eat like this and I get a cheat day, it wasn't that hard on regular weekdays eating 100 grams of carbs. It just wasn't that tough for me. And then 1 day a week, I get to eat whatever I want. My thought process was, I'm pretty certain I can do this diet for the rest of my life. I was relaxed. I wasn't worried about it. And that's a really cool place to be. That's part of the reason these relaxation drills are so important. As much of that extra stress as you can eliminate or reduce, you want to. It makes things easier. Because when you're living life, like, every now and again, I want to eat a little more, but not so much I've got to. It's not that big a deal. And hey, guess what? Coming up on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whenever you make cheat day, I'm going to get that donut I've been thinking about all week, or I'm going to get that piece of cake, or maybe both. Whatever it is for you. You get that one day a week where you just get to go wild if you want to. It wasn't a tough diet for me to follow. And then after a few weeks of more or less plateaued results, I think a few more pounds came off, but not a whole lot. I played with microfasting a couple of times in the past, and it had never gone very far. Like, I'd make it to afternoon without eating anything, and then at some point I'd eat something, and then I'd just binge. So I tested out the microfasting. And this time, I guess partially because I was already feeling successful in my diet, it wasn't this one thing that had to work. It was just I tested something out, it worked, and now I'm testing something else out. I was able to do microfasts. And the first ones were kind of tough, but they weren't that tough this time. So as I kept doing the 2 microfasts a week, in addition to what I was already doing, I started consistently. At first, it was 2 to 3 pounds a week that was coming off, and then it tapered off to 1 to 2 pounds, and then there was weeks, a few months into it where nothing had come off, and then it'd be 1 pound every other week. And so your body's going through a lot of phases while you're doing this. If you got a significant amount of weight to lose, you got to be patient with your body. You really want to regulate your mind. That's part of what the relaxation's about, but there's a lot of other things you can do. We can cover it elsewhere, but do something you enjoy as often as you can. Preferably if it's something constructive, something work-related, or spending time with your family, or something that's building the life you want to live. Do that as often as you can while you're doing this without overwhelming yourself, because you're going to get some of the feel-good from that is going to carry over and make it easier to follow through with your diet, whatever your diet goals are, or whatever your fat loss goals are. But the relaxation is key. And so for a while, I added in a 3rd microfast day. So I adopted a modified version of the 5-2 diet initially, 5 more or less normal days of eating, and then 2 microfast days. And then there's a modified version of that called the 4-3 diet, which is, you could guess, just 4 days of more or less normal diet and 3 days of microfasting. I did that for a couple of months because the results were getting slow, and I just wanted the weight to come off a little bit faster. Looking back, I could have been a little more patient through this, but things still came out all right. So eventually I went back to just 2 days of microfasting a week, and I've maintained that since then. But that's the short version of how I got down to roughly 180, and was initially my lowest point, was 180, and I stayed around that weight for... There was times where I dipped up a little bit. I never went back over 200, but I did get back up into the 190s. There's been a variety of things that have happened since then. Of course, recently I've gotten back down to, or actually I got down to lower than I've been in my adult life. My new low now, I believe, is 165. And I'm floating around through the week, roughly around 168. So total now, it's been about 90 pounds lost. But to go from roughly 260, I topped out at 258, to get down to 180 took me about 18 months. And again, your body's figuring a lot of things out at this time. You've got to figure out a handful of things you can do to behaviorally start changing. It's mental, it's emotional. There's a lot of different levels to this, but your body's going through a lot. Your body's learning to deal with an entirely new environment. So you need to be patient. You need to appreciate your body. Your body's doing the best it can for you. And when you start feeding those different inputs in, you will get different outputs, but it doesn't always happen on what we'd consider a logical level. You'd think if you're doing more or less the same thing every week, it'd always be an even amount of weight you lost every week or gained or whatever else it was. It doesn't always work that way. And part of that is because there's a ton of different factors that are going on inside you, and you can't see all of them. Patience. Just appreciate your body. Exercise for energy is also a good thing. I've talked about that elsewhere. Getting some exercise in that energizes you, helps you to feel alive, helps you feel excited just about life itself, not necessarily about you getting leaner, although that'll be a part of it. Just getting some activity in to celebrate your body and your aliveness is a pretty cool thing to do anytime. So exercise for energy will be a strong benefit for you if you choose to do this. Once again, if you haven't been there before, check out benlangley.com. Got all the stuff from Facebook. We got the podcast going there. Any of the stuff I do online, I do my best to get everything at one point. So if you want to follow all of it, you can do that at benlangley.com. Just to summarize, the things I suggest you do to start out with are moderate carb reduction and get healthy fats. Healthy fats, I didn't start off with that. I started out with just the moderate carb reduction. That still worked. Healthy fats makes everything, including microfasting, so much easier. Get the healthy fats in. They're delicious. They're satisfying. It feels like you're starting to eat the things you were meant to eat. So healthy fats, I can't emphasize that point enough. How you figure it out, what healthy fats exactly you're going to lose. I'll do a video in the future covering all the healthy fats I've used, but the big ones, again, for me, coconut oil, and that's virgin unrefined coconut oil, and grass-fed butter. Those are the two big healthy fats I get every day. Finally, I just appreciate you being here. This was stuff I never planned on doing anything like this with diet when I got started. I never thought I'd be doing, particularly not social media. I'm going to YouTube and Instagram. When Instagram came out, I was just done. I was not having anything to do with it. I was kind of tired of Facebook anyway, so I'm not messing with any of that stuff. And to think I'd be here, telling people the things I did to lose weight, I don't know. It's pretty surreal. But thank you very much for being here. And again, if you want to keep track of everything I'm doing online, you can find it all at benlangley.com. If you've got any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. Any questions, comments, I can come on and do a couple of these videos as a Q&A and just to cover, whatever questions you have. One thing that I've considered that I don't hear asked very much. I'll do this as a final question, then we can close out. A lot of people don't ask about the internal game. Most people want diet tips and exercise tips and things like that, hoping that they'll learn the new trick that is the reason behind everything. The inner game is the big piece of this, and that's why I keep mentioning the relaxation. That's one of the easiest pieces of the inner game to get. What I call changing your brain for fat loss was instrumental in me being able to come back to this. I'd been yo-yo dieting for 22 years. If there hadn't been an inner shift, I don't think there's any reason to expect this would have been the breakthrough. But there was a huge inner shift, and a piece of it was regularly relaxing. A piece of it was recognizing the hidden patterns in myself that were leading to overeating. A piece of it was recognizing patterns, the pattern of punishment that a lot of people have for both diet and exercise. But this whole inner game of it, changing your brain for fat loss, is going to make all the dieting you do, all the exercise you do, much, much easier. And in some cases, it's going to make it fun. That's why I teach that. And most people don't ask about it. I think it's the question that should be on the mind of more people that are really interested in losing weight and losing it permanently, particularly if you've yo-yo dieted in the past. What inside you is making this so challenging to get to and to maintain? Change your brain for fat loss. Again, I'm Ben Langley. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. We'll talk again soon.